My cheating boyfriend dumped me cruelly on social media, so I vanished without warning. Now my revenge has him broken, begging, and fully exposed. 3 years, 1,090 to 5 days of building a life with someone I thought I knew. One TikTok video to tear it all down. One disappearing act to reveal the truth about who Derek really was, and more importantly, who I am without him. When I first met Derek at 21, I was living in that cramped studio apartment where the garbage disposal had a habit of jamming every other week. He was the maintenance guy's friend, the one who actually knew which buttons to press and which pipes to jiggle. First green flag, I thought, watching him roll up his sleeves and dive elbow deep into the mechanical chaos under my sink. A man who could fix things. A man who didn't run away when life got messy. We exchanged Instagram handles that day. Him wiping grease off his hands with a paper towel, me trying not to stare at the way his hair fell across his forehead when he concentrated. The texting started immediately. Good morning messages, memes that made me laugh out loud in meetings, photos of random things throughout the day. That special kind of early relationship energy, where everything feels like a sign that the universe is conspiring in your favor. The first year with Derek felt like coming home. We fell into rhythms that seemed natural, organic, meant to be. Netflix documentaries every Thursday night, his arm around my shoulders as we watched true crime stories and made half-serious plans about how we'd survive a zombie apocalypse. Sunday dinners at his mother's house, where she'd pile my plate with enough food for 3 people and ask detailed questions about my job, my family, my opinions on everything from the weather to the local news. I'd never dated someone whose family actually seemed to like me before. His friends became our friends. Summer camping trips where I'd wake up in his tent to the sound of bacon sizzling and Xavier's off-key singing. Beach days where Derek would carefully apply sunscreen to my shoulders and take candid photos of me reading, laughing, existing in the golden hour light. Winter nights when his apartment's heater would break and we'd huddle together under every blanket we could find, our breath visible in the cold air, making jokes about being pioneers. Derek remembered my birthday without phone reminders. He knew I liked my coffee with oat milk and 2 sugars. When I had food poisoning last winter and spent 3 days unable to keep anything down, he brought me ginger tea and crackers and sat with me while I dozed fitfully, his hand cool against my fevered forehead. He listened when I talked about my day, asked follow-up questions, remembered details about coworkers I'd mentioned weeks earlier. Looking back now, I can see the cracks that were always there, painted over with a kind of hope that makes you interpret every gesture in the most generous light possible. The way he'd suggest I wear the blue dress instead of the black one because it was more flattering on my figure. How he'd change the subject whenever I mentioned wanting to go back to school, redirecting the conversation to the cost, the time commitment, the stress it would add to my life. The comments about celebrities he found attractive, always followed by a quick, "But you're beautiful too, babe," that felt more obligatory than sincere. I told myself these were minor things, the kind of small irritations that exist in every relationship. I convinced myself that his suggestion that I not take the promotion at work came from a place of caring, not control. When he'd get quiet and distant after I spent time with my friends, I attributed it to his introversion, not jealousy. I was so busy being grateful for the big things, his presence, his consistency, his apparent devotion, that I learned to overlook the small cuts, the tiny ways he made me question myself. The 3rd year was when I started believing in forever. We talked about moving in together when my lease ended in August. I'd catch myself mentally decorating our hypothetical shared space, imagining lazy Saturday mornings in our bed, dinner parties with friends around our table. Derek seemed to want the same things, or at least, he said he did. He'd bring up apartments he'd seen online, neighborhoods he thought we'd like, furniture stores we should visit when the time came. 3 weeks before the TikTok incident, we spent a Saturday at the beach. I was self-conscious about wearing a bikini, but Derek insisted I looked beautiful, took photos of me laughing in the waves, told me he was the luckiest guy in the world. That night, sunburned and exhausted, we fell asleep on his couch watching a terrible horror movie, and I remember thinking, this was exactly what happiness felt like. Ordinary, comfortable, safe. The Monday night before my world imploded, Derek came over for dinner. We made pasta from scratch, something we'd been wanting to try for months, and turned his phone on silent so we could focus on each other. We talked about his cousin's upcoming wedding, whether we should book a hotel room or try to save money by driving home the same night. He helped me wash the dishes afterward, and when I got sauce on my shirt, he laughed and said I was adorable. He kissed me goodbye at my door and said, "Love you, babe," like he had 1,000 times before. 12 hours later, I would discover that the man who'd kissed me goodnight while promising to text me when he got home safely had spent the evening calling me hideous to a bar full of strangers. Tuesday started like any other day. I was working through my lunch break, scrolling mindlessly through social media while eating a sad desk salad, when my phone lit up with a text from Amara. Just a TikTok link and 3 words in all caps, "Call me now." Amara is not dramatic. She's the friend who texts minor issue when her apartment floods, who refers to car accidents as slight delays, who once described a breakup as a mutual business dissolution. When Amara uses capital letters, the world is ending. I click the link with the kind of dread you feel opening medical test results or checking your bank balance after a weekend of poor decisions. The video loaded slowly, office Wi-Fi being what it is, and for a moment I didn't understand what I was seeing. Then the scene came into focus. Throwbacks. That dive bar with the flickering Budweiser sign that Derek and his friends frequented every Monday night. I'd been there enough times to know that particular corner booth, that specific angle of neon lighting that made everyone look slightly green and desperate. There was Derek, clearly intoxicated. His face flushed that particular shade of red that meant he'd moved past tipsy into the realm of poor decision-making. His arm was slung around Xavier's shoulders, both of them grinning at something off camera. I could hear the ambient noise of the bar. Clinking glasses, overlapping conversations, the distant sound of a basketball game on the television. Then someone off camera asked the question that would change everything, so, rate your girlfriend, bro. I watched Derek's expression shift in real time. The casual, slightly dopey smile he wore when drunk transformed into something I'd never seen before. His eyes lit up with a kind of malicious amusement, like someone had just handed him the perfect setup for a joke he'd been dying to tell. This wasn't the face of someone caught off guard by an unexpected question. This was the face of someone who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Eliana? He drew out my name like he was considering it for the first time. Honestly, probably the most hideous girl I've ever been with. Like a 4 on a good day, maybe. The bar erupted in that particular sound of guys egging each other on, voices overlapping in a chorus of "oh" and "damn, dude" and "savage." Someone in the background shouted, "roasted," like we were in middle school instead of supposedly being adults capable of basic human decency. But Derek wasn't done. The initial laugh had apparently given him confidence, because he kept going, his words cutting deeper with each sentence. "But she cooks really good enchiladas and never complains when I go out with the boys, so I keep her around. Low maintenance, you know? Sometimes you gotta make compromises." I was still processing the first round of humiliation when someone else chimed in from off camera. "Aren't you worried she'll see this?" Derek's laugh was the sound of genuine amusement. "Nah, she doesn't even know what TikTok is. Besides, I'm thinking about upgrading soon anyway. Too much baggage with this one." The video ended there, cutting off abruptly as someone reached for the phone. The timestamp in the corner read 11:43 p.m., Monday night. While I'd been at home doing a clay face mask and sending him sweet goodnight texts, he'd been publicly humiliating me to a room full of strangers and an audience of 177,000 TikTok users. I sat in the break room for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, staring at my phone screen as the numbers ticked upward. Views climbing past 200,000. Likes approaching 20,000. Comments flooding in faster than I could read them. A mixture of people laughing along with the joke and others expressing sympathy for the poor girl who didn't deserve this treatment. The strangest part was the complete absence of tears. I'd expected to cry, to sob, to fall apart, to have some kind of dramatic emotional breakdown worthy of the moment. Instead, I felt nothing at first, then everything at once, then nothing again. Like my brain was trying to process information that simply didn't compute. 3 years of believing I was loved. 3 years of morning kisses and inside jokes and shared plans for the future. 3 years of thinking I knew someone completely, only to discover that the person I'd been sleeping next to every night saw me as a temporary convenience, a placeholder until something better came along. I texted Amara back, coming over after work. "Don't tell anyone yet." Then I put my phone in my bag, turned off notifications, and somehow managed to get through 3 more client appointments without completely falling apart. Muscle memory is a strange thing. My hands knew how to do my job even when my brain was spiraling, even when every client compliment about my haircut or my skin felt like a lie I'd been telling myself for years. After work, I didn't go home. Home was full of Derek, his spare phone charger on my nightstand, his favorite mug in my dish drainer, his Netflix account logged into my TV. Home was where he'd kissed me goodbye less than 24 hours ago, while secretly planning my public humiliation. Instead, I drove to Target with the kind of singular focus usually reserved for natural disasters. I bought a cheap duffel bag and filled it with essentials, travel-sized toiletries, a few changes of clothes, my phone charger, basic survival items. The cashier was a teenager who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else, scanning my items with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd checked out thousands of broken lives and emergency escapes. The total came to $47.16. I still have the receipt tucked in my wallet, a paper monument to the moment I decided to disappear. The drive to Amara's apartment gave me 20 minutes to think. 20 minutes of city traffic and red lights and the growing realization that I was about to burn down 3 years of my life without looking back. I parked in her complex and sat in my car for another 20 minutes, engine running, air conditioning blasting, watching the video one more time to make sure I hadn't imagined the whole thing. I hadn't. If anything, it was worse on the second viewing. You could see the calculation in Derek's eyes, the way he paused before answering like he was considering his audience, crafting his response for maximum impact. This wasn't a drunk mistake. This was performance art, and I was the punchline. Amara didn't ask questions when I showed up at her door with my hastily packed bag and what must have been a shell-shocked expression. She just pointed to her couch, poured 2 glasses of the cheap rose we used to drink in college, and waited for me to find my words. "I'm not giving him the satisfaction," I finally said. "No breakup conversation, no tears, no dramatic confrontation he can tell his friends about later. I'm just going to disappear." We spent that night creating my vanishing act like we were planning a heist. Block Derek on everything. Phone, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, even LinkedIn just to be thorough. Change all my passwords, especially the ones he knew. Call out sick from work for the rest of the week. Tell only my mother where I was really going and swear her to secrecy. By midnight, Derek had texted 7 times. The messages started normal. "Hey babe, what do you want for dinner tomorrow? And still coming over tonight?" Before gradually shifting to confusion, "Where are you, and why aren't you answering your phone?" By morning, there were 12 missed calls and increasingly frantic voicemails. Not once did he mention the TikTok. Not once did he acknowledge what he'd done. He was worried about my silence, but apparently not worried enough to connect it to his public betrayal of our entire relationship. Staying at Amara's felt like living in a safe house. Her apartment was small and cluttered, full of plants she somehow managed to keep alive despite her chaotic schedule and artwork from her brief stint as a pottery enthusiast. It was nothing like the life I'd been building with Derek, and that felt perfect. I needed to exist in a space that held no memories of him, no reminders of the future we'd been planning. We binged Love Island for 3 straight days. There's something oddly therapeutic about watching other people's relationship drama when your own life is imploding. The contestants seemed so young, so convinced that their connections were real and lasting, and I found myself wanting to reach through the screen and warn them about the difference between performance and authenticity. Friday morning, Amara volunteered to go to my apartment to gather more of my belongings. She came back with a bag of clothes and a disturbing report, evidence that Derek had been there. Empty energy drink cans on my kitchen counter, his jacket thrown over my couch like he owned the place, a note taped to my front door that simply said, "Call me, we need to talk." The TikTok had mysteriously disappeared from his account by Thursday night, but the internet is forever. Screenshots and screen recordings were making their way through our mutual friend group, generating the kind of sympathy messages I'd been dreading. "Are you okay?" Texts from people I hadn't spoken to in months. Acquaintances who suddenly wanted to check in now that my personal drama had become public entertainment. By the weekend, Derek had escalated to using his friends' phones to try to reach me. Unknown numbers would light up my screen, and I'd let them go to voicemail, listening later to increasingly desperate messages from the man who'd called me hideous 5 days earlier. His Instagram stories became a masterclass in damage control, vague posts about missing someone and the biggest mistake of my life, accompanied by lyrics from sad songs and black and white photos of empty beaches. It was Amara who first asked the question that changed everything. "Had you been noticing red flags with Derek all along?" At first, I was defensive. We'd had a good relationship. He remembered my birthday, watched shows he hated because I liked them, never complained about my hair clogging the shower drain. The bar for boyfriends is so low these days that basic courtesy feels like extraordinary devotion. But then Amara started asking specific questions, and the pattern became impossible to ignore. Did Derek ever make comments about my appearance? Well, there was that time he said my favorite jeans made me look kind of wide, but in a cute way. And when I got highlights last summer, he asked if the salon meant to make them that brassy. He had a habit of pointing out celebrities he found attractive, always the super thin, no makeup types who looked nothing like me. Did Derek support my goals? He said he was proud when I got promoted, but he also suggested I shouldn't take it because the stress might be too much. When I mentioned wanting to go back to school, he'd always redirect the conversation to cost and time commitment, never to possibility or dreams. Did Derek have equal standards for our relationship? If I was 15 minutes late, I'd get increasingly annoyed texts. But he could cancel plans last minute to hang with the boys, and I was expected to be understanding about his need for spontaneity. By the time we finished our analysis, I had a sick feeling in my stomach. The TikTok wasn't an aberration. It was the first time I'd seen the truth without the filter of wanting to believe we were happy. A week into my disappearance, Derek showed up at Amara's apartment with grocery store flowers and a handwritten letter, 8 pages front and back, full of tear stains and promises to spend the rest of my life making this up to you. Classic manipulation tactics dressed up as romantic gestures. The letter was a greatest hits collection of excuses. He was drunk. His friends were pressuring him. He'd had a bad day at work. He was insecure and afraid I'd realize I was too good for him. But buried in all the deflection was one line that almost got me. I said those horrible things because I'm insecure and afraid you'll realize you're too good for me. For 20 minutes, I actually considered calling him back. That's how effective his manipulation was. Even after publicly humiliating me, he managed to make me feel sorry for him. Thankfully, Amara's Wi-Fi chose that moment to crash, so I couldn't act on my temporary insanity. Instead, we went through old photos on my phone, and I had my first real moment of clarity. In every picture of us together from the past year, I was looking at him with complete adoration while he was either looking at his phone, making faces at the camera, or staring off into the distance. Not a single photo where he was looking at me the way I was looking at him. When Derek couldn't reach me directly, he started mobilizing other people. He showed up at my brother, Miguel's apartment at 7 in the morning, asking if he knew where I was. Miguel, being the protective brother he is, told Derek that if he came by again, they'd be having a different kind of conversation. Then came the family involvement. Derek's mother texted me, "I'm worried about him. He won't eat, barely sleeps. I know you don't owe him anything, but please call me." The same woman who'd treated me like family for 3 years was now weaponizing her son's self-destructive behavior to guilt me into contact. I responded simply, "I'm sorry Derek is struggling, but I'm not responsible for his choices or his healing. Please encourage him to get professional help." She wrote back immediately, "He made a mistake. Everyone deserves forgiveness. Some mistakes, I realized, change how you see a person forever." After 37 missed calls and weeks of escalating behavior, I finally agreed to meet with Derek. Not to reconcile, that possibility had died the moment I saw that TikTok, but to end this chapter definitively. We met at Java Hut, a neutral location where I could maintain control of the situation. He looked better than I expected, dressed in the blue button-down I'd given him for his birthday. For a split second, my heart did that familiar flip it had always done when I saw him. Then I remembered why we were there. He launched into what sounded like a rehearsed speech about remorse and personal growth, but I cut him short by placing my phone on the table, open to screenshots of WhatsApp messages Xavier had shown me the day before. "So, who's Adriana?" I asked. The look on his face was everything I needed to see, pure panic, the expression of someone whose carefully constructed lies had just collapsed. The screenshots revealed the truth. Derek had been planning our breakup for weeks before the TikTok incident, asking his friends for advice on how to make me break up with him so he could avoid looking like the bad guy. The TikTok wasn't a drunken mistake. It was a calculated move designed to humiliate me into leaving. What I learned next defied every assumption I'd made about the situation. Adriana, the woman Derek had been seeing while planning my public humiliation, reached out to me directly. She'd had no idea Derek had a girlfriend until she saw his apology video on TikTok. He told her he was single, dealing with a crazy ex who couldn't let go. We met for coffee, 2 women comparing notes on the lies one man had told us both. She showed me texts where he was telling her he loved her the same day he was leaving sobbing voicemails on my phone. By the end of our conversation, we were following each other on Instagram and making plans to check out a new wine bar together. Sometimes solidarity comes from the strangest places. Xavier, racked with guilt over his complicity in the situation, finally revealed the full scope of Derek's deception. He showed me messages from weeks before the TikTok, where Derek was asking his friends how to break up with me because he'd met someone at the gym. The TikTok wasn't spontaneous cruelty, it was a premeditated strategy to make me the villain in our breakup story. "He's been lying to everyone," Xavier told me, telling us how heartbroken he is while still texting Adriana behind the scenes. 40 days after discovering that TikTok, I finally felt like myself again. I cut 7 inches off my hair, joined a kickboxing class, applied for a digital marketing certificate program I'd been considering for years. Each change felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been slowly eroded by 3 years of subtle criticism and manipulation. I redecorated my bedroom, removing all traces of the masculine-friendly color scheme I'd chosen to accommodate Derek's preferences. I bought sheets in sage green instead of the gray ones he said brought out his eyes. I hung artwork that I loved, not pieces we'd compromised on together. Most importantly, I learned to trust my own judgment again. The red flags had been there all along, the subtle put-downs disguised as helpful suggestions, the way he made himself the center of every decision, the pattern of making me question my own instincts. I'd ignored them because I wanted so badly to believe in our love story. Looking back now, I can see that those 3 years weren't wasted time. They were an education in recognizing manipulation, in understanding the difference between love and control, in learning that someone can say they love you while systematically undermining your confidence and autonomy. Derek's final desperate attempts at contact, the public Instagram posts, the Venmo payments with sentimental notes, the appearance at my workplace, weren't romantic gestures. They were the actions of someone who couldn't accept that he'd lost control of the narrative, that his victim had the audacity to walk away without providing him the dramatic confrontation he'd been expecting. The last I heard from Derek was a text from yet another burner phone. "It's Derek. Please don't block this number. I just need to know one thing. Did those 3 years mean anything to you? Because they were everything to me." I stared at those words for a long time. 3 years of inside jokes and holiday dinners. 3 years of building what I thought was a shared future, but also 3 years of walking on eggshells. 3 years of making myself smaller to accommodate his ego. 3 years of accepting crumbs of affection while convincing myself I was being fed a feast. I didn't reply. Instead, I blocked the number, turned off my phone, and made plans for a life that belonged entirely to me. This morning, exactly 6 weeks after that TikTok destroyed my old life, I woke up to sunlight streaming through windows that showcase artwork I chose, in a bedroom decorated according to my preferences, in an apartment where every decision reflects my taste alone. My coffee tastes better when it's made exactly how I like it, without compromise. I start my digital marketing classes next month. I've made new friends through kickboxing. I'm planning a solo trip to somewhere Derek always said was too expensive or too dangerous, or not really our kind of place. Sometimes the trash really does take itself out. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. Sometimes discovering that someone sees you as hideous is exactly what you need to realize how beautiful you actually are. To anyone out there dealing with their own version of Derek, you deserve better, and better exists. The love you're settling for isn't the love you deserve. Trust your instincts, especially when someone's trying to convince you they're wrong. And to Derek, if you ever read this, thank you. Thank you for showing me exactly who you are when you thought I wasn't watching. Thank you for the TikTok that set me free. Thank you for being such a spectacular failure of a human being that leaving you became the easiest decision I ever made. Your hideous ex is thriving without you, and she always will be.